Welcome, guys, to Tell It to Trevor. I'm your host, Trevor Shelley, and today on my podcast I have
The show CJ Evans. What's going on, Trevor?
nothing much.
Like,
I will say
super
that
thankful.
Battle Royal that you had, I think it was, what was it, last week?
Yeah, the Holiday Slam Battle Royal.
That was my first Battle Royal I ever saw in person, and I was like thinking, like, how WWE has their every, 30 seconds or 50 seconds someone comes in.
Well, the crazy thing about Battle Royals compared to there's like two different variations. You have a Battle Royal where everybody starts in the ring at the same time, and then you have a like Rumble style where it's like they come out like how the Royal Rumble is in WWE. It's like, they go starts off with two people and then every so long, like however long of a time limit, like every minute, another person comes in.
Yeah.
Um, the situation is that the style we did at the Holiday Slam was a battle royal. Everybody started in the ring at one time, and we just kind of everybody's in at one time, and then it just kind of goes in for a free for all where people start getting thrown and tossed out. I have been in those rumble styles where people come in, ever so often, and those are really fun because you can really like make. I feel like it's easier to make more out of your time in those matches. I feel like when you slide in, it's like you're number 10 or whatever. You slide in, you however many people are in the ring, you have a little bit of time to like do something before the next person comes in. So that's kind of like your time in the spotlight. In battle royals, I feel like until it comes down to like the last four or like, two, I feel like that's when you start getting your actual, oh, this guy's actually like, look at what he's able to do. Because I mean, when you have that many people in the ring, you're really limited because there's no space, there's no room. Not to mention, it's like everybody's on top of each other, and you're having to constantly like be looking over your shoulder. Like, am I going to get eliminated by this guy? Is this guy going to come over here and stomp me? Like, it's pretty wild.
For like me watching also the Co-Zone and Manny Fly match,
Hmm.
I was like, you know, never seen Co-Zone wrestle in person or
Right.
Manny Fly. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be interesting.
Well, you see, the key to that is so Kozone is very. I feel like seeing him in person, you wouldn't realize how good of a wrestler he is right
Yeah.
off the bat. Because I mean, you can see him and you notice he's very athletic. But at the same time, it's like you see athletic people all the time in wrestling that aren't actually like they might be big in size, but they actually are not that good in the ring when it comes to like acrobatic ability and stuff. Kozone is like I like to say he's like a freak of nature because he's just ungodly athletic on top of being so big and strong. It's like I haven't seen a move that Kozone doesn't really know how to do or how to teach, regardless if it's more of like a high flyer based move or a technician based move. He's still able to show people that, and like it is really crazy seeing him be able to take on a multitude of styles and be able to teach and do all those styles. As for Manny Lowe, um, Manny's always very entertaining when I get to see him. I'm in the same boat as you. I've only seen Kozone wrestle live a handful of times. Most of the videos I've seen is stuff online of him wrestling, like at DPW and stuff like that. But seeing him live, I feel like it's a whole different ball game. No pun intended. Um, then it's like with Manny Lowe, he's very entertaining. He's very fun to watch, and he definitely interacts with the crowd and engages with the crowd a lot. And I always love to see that because it's not like he's just going in there running through stuff trying to make it look fun, like look good. It's like he wants it all to like matter, and he wants people to feel like that they got their money's worth when they watch him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I respect that because for me, like my plan is one day maybe get back into the ring, go back to
Hmm.
training and everything.
Absolutely.
But for me, when I first originally started this podcast, it was like the most nerve wracking for me. If you guys go back and watch Jake Payne's episode, don't know where Jake Payne went off to because I want to bring him back because his brother Austin will tell me where Jake went to.
Right.
So you can hear me ask the same question 3 or 4 times back to back.
Okay.
And the moment we stopped recording was, "Hey, you asked the same question 4 times." And I was like, "Yeah, I ran out of questions that I was thinking about,
Mm,
and I used to have an 8x10 wall over my entertainment center. So I was like, cool, great. I just forgot questions. Let me just look at this wall and ask how was it meeting this person,
right.
just to fill in the time gaps."
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes you gotta like go on the fly, you know what I mean? You can't always you can only I think being like when in your line of work, being in like doing podcasts and interviews, I feel like it's very difficult because each person is going to answer questions different ways,
Yeah,
and some people are more detailed on their answers as opposed to some people being like a lot more short. So it could be a situation of like me, if you ask me questions, I'm always going to give you like more detail based behind it to explain kind of
yeah.
why I have that feeling or that view that I do. Some people are just going to give you that straight up like, oh, it was cool, yeah, no, and it's like, well, then you burn through the questions really fast. And it's like, well, now I've run out of stuff to ask, so you kind of got to coast and figure out new stuff to ask or change topic altogether.
Now I see you're a big Marvel fan.
Oh,
What is
definitely a
your
Marvel fan.
favorite character in the Marvel universe?
Um, so definitely a big one is Venom. Venom's a big influence for me.
Yeah,
Captain America's a big influence for me. Deadpool and Wolverine obviously are really big influences. Um, I would say that would probably be like my top four. I was always like growing up, I've watched superhero movies since I was a kid. I was
yeah,
always a big fan. And I mean, I was always real big into, I mean, not just Marvel, but DC as well, but I've always liked Marvel more than DC.
yeah,
Um, I do feel like that Marvel is like in a weird way. I think the reason I like it so much is because I've been watching superheroes since I was a kid. I've also been a wrestling fan since I was a kid. And the biggest thing is that I feel like it's crazy because you watch like a superhero movie and I feel like that you can really see a lot of similarities to wrestling matches. I
yeah,
feel like that you have good guys, you have bad guys. The bad guy's trying to take over the world for whatever reason. The good guy's going to do what he can to stop it. And there's just so many similarities that it's like, it's kind of funny that it's like I like both of these things. And until you get into the wrestling business and figure out like the intertwining details of behind the scenes stuff, then you're like, oh wow, like it's just very similar to superhero movies and stuff like that. Also, if my voice sounds a little off, I do apologize. I'm getting over being sick this past weekend. So my voice was completely gone Friday night and Saturday for the most part. So like I'm just now getting back to where I can actually like speak with any kind of assertiveness in my voice.
yeah.
So just want to put that out there as well.
All right, you ready to start these wrestling questions I got for you?
Sure, man, sign me up.
What sparked your interest in the professional wrestling industry?
Started my interest. Well, I would have to say that what initially got me interested in wrestling was when I was young. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old. I would watch wrestling when it would come on Friday Night SmackDown every week with my family. It would be me, my mom, and my granny would sit around and we would watch wrestling. But see, my mom, before I was ever born, she was a big wrestling fan back in the day. And then she kind of got out of wrestling for a little while. But then when I was born and I started getting into it, it kind of brought her back into it. So then she kind of got back into being a fan. So then every week we would sit around and watch, the weekly television show of SmackDown or Raw or whatever. SmackDown initially was the one that kind of got us back into it. But then eventually, she ended up wanting to see Raw and the pay-per-views and everything as well. So then we ended up, started watching everything. Monday Night
Yeah,
Raw, Friday Night SmackDown. Every month there was a pay-per-view. We were going to order that pay-per-view. And I remember watching a little bit of ECW before they ended up going off the air. I remember watching a little bit of it before it finally stopped. But the thing that really got me interested in it, I would probably say, was the storytelling aspect
yeah,
of being able to like invest in certain characters and just see these people and see how each one is different in their own way. And then they go in here and like all these, obviously as a kid, you're watching these like huge athletes take on each other. So it's like the violence aspect was entertaining, the comedy aspect was entertaining. There was just everybody being their own like gimmick and doing their own thing is kind of what drug me into it. And then the more I watched it, I just, fell in love with it.
Who were your wrestling mentors growing up?
Wrestling mentors, I would definitely say people that I always tell people this, like the person who initially got me into wrestling, as in like this is the person I saw on television and made me want to be a professional wrestler, was Jeff Hardy. And that's because, I mean, obviously I live in North Carolina, you know, I grew up not far from where the Hardys grew up. And when I initially saw Jeff and Matt on television and, started doing some research on them, I found out that I had a lot of similarities in common with them. Like,
Yeah.
Jeff is very charismatic. He's very artistic, and he's not just like Jeff's not just a wrestler. Jeff's an entertainer
Yeah.
because it's like he wants to entertain people through multiple aspects of the industry. It's not just wrestling. He also does art. He also does music. He has all these different avenues, and watching him growing up is like definitely one of the main ones that got me to fall in love with wrestling, to be like, I want to be like this when I grow up and I want to be a wrestler. Another big one that was a big impact on me was Chris Jericho, like Y2J Chris Jericho, because of how, to me, it just, as I watched and as I grew, like I grew up and I watched wrestling growing up. So like seeing the different, eras of wrestling and seeing the progression of Chris Jericho's story and his gimmick, it was just really crazy to see him change like ever so often he'll change his character altogether into a different style
Yeah.
and it'll still get over with the crowd. And
Exactly.
that to me always was a big impact on me because I said to myself going into wrestling, that's how I wanted to be. I didn't want to be like a one trick pony where it's like, oh, well, I can only do this one thing and people like me for it. I wanted to grow and like envelop multiple, like a whole different interlining of stories and show the progression of who I am and why I changed to this and why I do this. And Chris Jericho does a very good job of that.
Yeah.
So those are two of the ones watching growing up that got me really into it and like kind of made me want to base myself off of. Another one that definitely is like a mentor in my mind of somebody that I would want to meet. I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, but I would love to, is AJ Styles. AJ Styles is like in my top probably three of all time favorites because of the fact of he's just so good at literally everything. It's like you can watch him do power stuff, striking stuff, technical stuff, high flying stuff. It doesn't matter. And he's just all around just such a great athlete, a great entertainer. He's good on a mic. He's good as a face. He's good as a heel. It doesn't matter. And I remember when I initially saw him was back when he was in TNA, and just being able to see the kind of stuff he could pull off and the stuff he could do was a really big impact on me because once again I'm looking at this as an aspect of like this is what I'm wanting to be growing up, and I'm
Exactly.
seeing this guy doing all this crazy stuff. So definitely those three are three of the ones that stand out to me when it comes to like I would say is like mentors to like how I wanted to strive to be.
Especially for me, like my wrestlers growing up was Styles, Johnny Gargano,
Yeah.
Tommaso Ciampa, Jeff Hardy, which I got to meet Jeff in 2020, no, 2019 at my job. He was there, I think, two days before his dad's funeral was.
Right.
And I was cleaning tables, and my best friend sends me a text message and says, "Hey, do you know this guy? He's a professional wrestler. He's checking out over at the register." And I'm like just looking over since he had a face mask and everything on,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Yeah, that's Jeff Hardy." She's like, "Okay, are you gonna go see if you can get a photo with him?" I was like, "Absolutely." I was like, the work never said we could go get photos with these people or bond
Right.
with them. So after we closed up, me and him went behind the building, and I asked, "Hey, can you do the Willow voice?" And he did it for me, and I was like, "What the crap? This is like for me seeing it in person, and then hearing it on TV is just two different aspects
Oh
of it."
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jeff is the times that I've met him, he has always been such a like he's the type of guy that you would never know was famous because he doesn't act like he's any better than anybody else. He treats
Exactly.
everybody with respect. He's always been very respectful every time I've talked to him. Um, he doesn't treat people like he's bigger than anybody. He doesn't act like he's better than anybody. And honestly, like I really feel like that he's just so humble to talk to. And that I really think that's one thing that draws people to him to make them like him so much is because he's that people guy that you see and you're like, man, like you can just have a conversation about anything with him. It's like he'll talk to you about anything. He's so down to earth and just such a nice guy. I really
Yeah,
respect him.
because at the time I was starting out my DJ music career that I was still do now, but I was like, "Hey, can you listen to it? I love your music with Peroxide Gin that was part of that music band he was in," and
Oh
he
yeah.
listened to it, and he was like, "You got something?" And I was like, "Well, thanks." I was like, I just learned on my own. I just listened to like Avicii and Timmy Trumpet's music and try to figure out how I can make my music sound similar but not exact.
Right.
Because like for my music, now that I'm like been in the school of Tomorrowland, it's the biggest festival around the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool that he kind of gave you that I guess like words of wisdom on it because I mean
Yeah,
like especially when you're starting out doing something that you don't know all the intertwinings of, it's definitely encouraging to have somebody of that caliber tell you like, hey, you're doing a really good job on this, keep it up.
but
Because I mean, it's easy when you first start something new to get discouraged and feel like, oh, I'm never going to be this top thing. I'm never going to be this good at this. And it's easy to get in your own head about it. But then when you have somebody that you respect come back and tell you, hey, no, man, you're doing a really good job, keep it up, then it gives you that drive and motivation to keep pushing to make something out of it. You know what I mean?
yeah, especially since like this year, I mean last year, I texted Timmy Trumpets and I was like, "Hey Timmy," I was like, "I know you probably are too busy to respond, but can I get you to check out some of my songs if you don't mind?" Gave me advice and everything, and he was like, "What's the best?" He was like, "Where do you want to be in your career with this?" And I was like, "Look, the goal I try want to be is like making theme songs for wrestlers or
Right.
go to Tomorrowland and just perform one time just to say I did it
Yeah,
because their stages are huge and every year is always a different stage."
for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's really cool, man, to see somebody like that. That's one thing I really love about wrestling is I think that's my favorite thing, honestly, about wrestling is that I get to meet so many different people and I get to talk to so many different people to see all aspects of wrestling. Like
Yeah,
some of my best friends in the world are wrestlers, but then vice versa. Some of my best friends are like people who help run companies. You know, like they might help do the booking, or they might help do the promoting, or they might help do the sponsors. And then I've got friends that do like sound and video, like they do like the hype packages and like the music. And now you're telling me like, oh, your goal is you really want to make it to the point where you're making theme songs for wrestlers.
yeah,
It's like, it's just really cool the, to see how big wrestling community can be. It's like, because it's like, one of my best friends is a ref. You know what I mean? It's like I think people think, oh, just because you're a wrestler, it's like all your friends are wrestlers, but no, it's like I try to have friends of all kinds of different people in the business
yeah,
because it's like it's just insane the amount of people you meet and like the different things they bring to wrestling as a whole. It's just insane.
yeah. What was your first wrestling match like?
My first wrestling match, as in like in front of people, like my debut match, or my first wrestling match as like a training match that was like, we're just in training going over stuff.
Your debut match.
Debut match. Oh, okay. Well, uh, the first thing that I really remember is the nerves. It was, I was insanely nervous because I'm thinking like, oh my God, this is my moment. This is the time I've done all this training for to be into this moment. And I'm going through my head 1,000 ways of everything from I'm going to screw this up to I'm not going to know what to do to I could get seriously hurt to, I mean, like 100 things going through my head because my debut match actually was it funny enough. Initially, what happened was I was helping with setup at a company and I was setting up, helping put the ring together and everything. And I would always go and I would show up early to help them, and just kind of, because that's how you're taught in wrestling is you're taught to show up early, help everybody out, get your name out. And I was doing that, going through the whole situation, doing all that. And next thing I know, the promoter comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I had a call out tonight. I'm gonna have to scrap a match." And I just kind of like on instinct followed it up with, "Well, hey man, I feel like I'm comfortable enough in a ring. I've had enough training that I can cover that for you if you need me to." And he was like, "Well, you haven't debuted yet." And I said, "No, but if you need somebody to cover that spot, I can take it."
Yeah.
And he like pulled some strings and he put me in the ring with somebody that he trusted to take care of me and make sure I didn't die, basically. Um, but I just remember being extremely nervous, extremely excited, and it was kind of just a mixture of like all these emotions at once because I mean, like part of me, you're a kid watching wrestling and it's like all you can think is I can't wait to go through that curtain and entertain these people. And then you get to that moment and it's like now I'm nervous, I'm excited, I want to make sure I entertain people, I want to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, that I'm entertained, like not just the aspect of like getting out there and doing the right moves or whatever, but like I don't get out there and like stumble over my words or like stumble over my feet or like and then you worry about dumb stuff that never happens. Like you worry like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna get in the ring and like trip on the rope getting in the ring and like every possible thing that could go wrong, you think of going through that curtain. But then
Yeah.
it's like I remember the key moment that it just kind of clicked for me was I'm standing behind the curtain, music hits, and I'm getting ready to go through the curtain. And it's like I was so nervous, so excited, and all these emotions were hitting me at once. And then as soon as I walked through the curtain and all the people started cheering, it's like my brain just kind of went on like cruise. And it was like, I didn't feel nervous then at that point. I didn't feel worried. I felt like it's like my adrenaline kicked in and it just took over completely. And I was comfortable. I was confident. I was believing in myself.
Yeah.
And it was such a weird feeling because I was so nervous and worried until it happened. And then the minute I went through the curtain, it was like, oh, I'm here. Now I'm gonna tear it down. Like this is gonna be the best match ever. And for future reference, it was not. That first match was not the best match ever. But in my mind, that was the mentality I had going into it.
Yeah. What are your goals in the future in wrestling?
So I try to set goals in a sense of I like to set like short term goals and long term goals. That way, because long term goals can take especially like when your goal is you want to make it to a big company or something like that, that's not really guaranteed on any kind of time scale. So if you only set long-term goals, it's hard to feel like that you're actually making any kind of traction in the mud. You just kind of feel like you're just spinning your wheels and you're going and you're not really seeing any kind of results.
Yeah.
Um, but with me, I try to set short term and long term goals. Short term goals for this year specifically is that I want to debut at some new companies that I haven't wrestled for, especially some places like one I'd really like to make it up to is PWF. I've done security for them, but I haven't actually wrestled there yet. So that's a company I'd like to debut at. Another one, Elevation. Elevation was a company that I feel like, and I'm pretty sure that they are taking a break. I don't think that they're like completely done running. I think they're just taking like a break for a period. But that that was a big company that I wanted to work for. Apple City Championship Wrestling is another big one. Action Pack Wrestling is another big one. Um, those are short term goals like that. I feel like, well, like one short term goal is like that. Another one is I want to, I really want to like get out of state more. This past year in 2024, I was able to travel and I wrestled in 3 states in 2024. But this year I really want to get out of state more and wrestle more out of state just because being out of state, you just learn so much different stuff. Like, because when you're wrestling around here, it's like, even if you're 2, 3 hours apart from each other in the shows, it's like, if you wrestle in Greensboro one night, and then you wrestle in Southern Pines one night, and then you wrestle in Winston-Salem one night, it's like a lot of the same people will come to these shows and they'll travel just like the wrestlers will to go to
Yeah.
them. And I feel like that it's really crazy because they travel to these shows and it's like you kind of just get the same reaction. Not always, I mean, because obviously every show's different. It has its own vibe. But like when I went to Georgia last year, it's like it's like that's kind of like your moment of like you have to feel like, am I good enough? Because now you're stepping into a place that you've never been. The crowd's not going to know who you are. Nobody's going to know who you are because you've never been there. You've never wrestled for this company and you've never wrestled any of those people there. So like now's the moment that you have to see like, am I actually good? Because if I'm not, they're going to know it. Then you also got to factor in when you go to different states, the different sides of this of the country that you go, they like different styles of wrestling because like down in North Carolina, South Carolina, they like that old school wrestling. Like they like, the 80s style wrestling, the old school style wrestling. You start going more towards like over towards the west side of the country, then they tend to be more like spotty. Like they like their spotty stuff. And I mean, then obviously, you go to some shows, they're going to do their lucha style, their Japanese strong style, their British strong style. I mean, there's all these different elements, and each, I feel like that's something I want to experience more. I want to go to these other states and see like what style does each state like. So that way I can see, okay, this is how I need to wrestle tonight in this area. So those are short terms. As for long terms, obviously the main long-term goal is to get signed to a major company. I'm not picky. Like a lot of people, they kind of draw lines and say one or the other. For me, my long-term goal is to be able to live and support my family off of wrestling. So I'm not going to say I have to go to WWE or have to go to AEW. I mean, if TNA comes up to me and says, hey, we're going to give you this contract with this amount of money and it's enough money for me to support myself and family and wrestle full time, then that's okay with me. Being signed to a major company is the ultimate goal for me. And that's kind of what I'm going to continue to push to strive for. And in the meantime, we'll hit all these little goals on the way there. But at the same time, that's the ultimate end all be all goal is I want to make it to this company.
Yeah. Like for me, like if I ever, became a wrestler 100%, I'm going to try to go to TNA just
Right.
because, growing up watching WWE TNA, and I even had the choice to go to like New Japan or
Yeah. New
go
Japan
to,
is definitely New Japan's definitely another big option that would be, I mean, like going to Japan would just be insane. I would love to wrestle in Japan and just see how they do their training and stuff.
I know New Japan has a school on the West Coast in California.
Yes. I actually, one of my friends, graduated from their dojo. They did their program that I think it was like a 3 or 4 month program that he went through. That he's actually one of my buddies from Firestar, Grant Watts. Grant Watts went through that program, and it was insane to see the transformation that came from him because, like, I watched him wrestle before he went to the New Japan dojo,
Yeah.
and then I watched him after he came back. And after he came back, he was like he was a whole different person. He was a different
Yeah.
breed. So I don't know what they're doing over there, but it's got to be pretty intense because, like I said, he came back and it was like he was a whole new wrestler.
Can you describe the feeling of winning your first championship?
So the funniest thing about my first championship is I had no idea that it was going to happen. Nobody told me. It wasn't like, oh well, you're going to win tonight, kid. This is your opportunity. Like nobody said none of that. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
My first, championship win, I was in a triple threat match, and the funny thing is that going up until this point, I had been on a losing streak. I had been losing every match, and like the crowd was just getting really behind me during this time because like even when I would lose, I was still putting on like a really good like investment match to them. Like it would like they could still invest in me and could support me, and like it was like that underdog mentality.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting beat, getting beat, getting beat. Well, finally, somehow I end up in a number one contenders match, and it's me fighting this guy. Well, during the match, he ends up like kicking me in the nuts. Well, the ref sees it. Well, then the ref's like disqualified. So then my first technical win was a disqualification, but it was a number one contenders match for the North American Championship. So I go on to, become number one contender for this title via
Yeah.
disqualification. So now I'm going into this triple threat match fighting for this belt, and I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell, like, I'm not going to win this. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen. Well, next thing you know, I end up I did like a future shock style DDT to the guy, and like I hit him, and the other dude's down, and I go to pin him, and it's like one, okay, any second he's gonna kick out. Two, okay, he's gonna kick out, or somebody's gonna kick me in the head. Three, and my eyes literally like were like saucers, like it looked like a deer in headlights. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, congratulations, you won. And then he's handing me the title, like the ref's handing me the title, and the crowd's going ballistic. They're insane. They're oh my God, they're so happy. I'm so happy. And I'm just yelling to the top of my lungs like I'm tickled to death. Like the amount of joy that of all the hard work that I'd put in up until that point, just to feel like it had paid off to some degree. It Wrestling is there's nothing that
Yeah.
feels like wrestling. Whether you're in the ring, the minute you're in the ring wrestling in front of all those people and to hear everybody behind you supporting you, and then to get that championship win on top of that, it the amount of like I guess like gratitude that I felt of how thankful
Yeah.
I was to be in that moment, it was just overwhelming, and it was definitely a highlight of that I will never forget.
How do you handle the mental and emotional aspects of wrestling?
The mental and emotional. Well, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Um, Wrestling takes a very big toll on the wrestlers. I'm not just going to say me, I'm going to say in general, because a lot of people suffer with a lot of, emotional, like trauma from it or mental trauma from it. Me personally, the way I handle it is that I care way too much to give up because
Yeah.
I don't feel as though that I'm doing this for me anymore. I've had a lot of friends in wrestling pass away since I started wrestling. And I feel like that I carry a little piece of them every time I go to a show, every time I go to a match,
Yeah.
and they're always going to be with me. So I tell people all the time when I got into wrestling, I started wrestling for me because that's what I wanted to do, but I'm still wrestling for them because now that I have people who care about me, follow me, and the fans who dedicate their time to come watch me and pay their money to come watch me, and then my friends that take all the time to support me and help me, I'm not the amount of mental and emotional problems that go into it aren't enough to stop me from doing it. The way that I handle it is the best way I can explain to handle it is by constantly striving to be better. Like, I get down in the dumps sometimes and I feel like that I'm not good enough. And I feel like that I'm constantly compared to other people, or that I'm like the second best to somebody else or some other, like, whoever it is. It's like, oh, well, you're this guy, you're so cool, but you're almost as good as that guy. You're not as good as him. And I feel like that weighs on me sometimes because I'm not trying to be like the best of the best. I just want to be the most memorable. Like, that's always been the goal. Like, I was always like, you know, I'm not going to sit in here and say that I'm going to I can get in the ring with Brock Lesnar and beat Brock Lesnar's ass. I'm not going to say that. But
Right.
I'm going to say that I want to be on the card and be the most memorable match of the show. And that's where the nickname the show came from. Everybody thinks it's like, oh, he's the show because it's like, oh, like TV show. It's like, no, I mean, I take elements of that from it, but the real meaning behind the show is because I'm going to be the most memorable person. I'm going to be the show element in the whole program, basically, like the highlight of the night, if you will. Um, but the emotional and mental fatigue that wrestling takes is difficult. There's times where I have to really make myself take rest days because I'm really bad about. I mean, bro, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to go to training every week. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, gym Monday, training Tuesday, gym Wednesday, training Thursday, gym Friday, show Saturday, training Sunday. And it's like you start looking at this schedule and you start running that every day and you start thinking like, man, I'm starting to get really tired. I'm starting to get really burnt out. And you just can't. You got to continue to grind and continue to push. And that's the way that I get over that mental, emotional, physical stress and fatigue is I'm not going to settle for subpar. I'm not going to settle for second best. I'm going to be as good as I can possibly be. And I'm going to push myself to be the best that I can. So, with that being said, like the grind never stops. I'm going to continue to push and grow as much as I can. And I mean, obviously, you do have to take rest days. You got to force yourself because your body needs time to heal. But at the same time, it's like, today is technically my rest day. Like, I had a show Friday night, I had a show Saturday night, I had training Sunday, and then now today's technically supposed to be a rest day for me. But as soon as I get done with this podcast with you, I'm going to be going and working out because I don't want to be lazy. So, like I said, that's probably the best way I handle it is to get in the right mental health, I'm not mental health, the right mental state, and just kind of like push yourself to be like, you can't allow this to control you. You have to control it.
Yeah. All right. So I have this segment called Trev Shock,
Okay.
which people, if you're familiar with it, it is like Stone Cold's questionnaires.
All
You got
right.
certain those pop questions when you're in meetings
Yeah.
where you got a certain amount of time. I've ever heard some people do like 10 seconds, mine are 50 seconds.
Okay.
Just because some of my questions you got to think on, or people just want really try to beat that record of 47 seconds.
So
So,
my goal is to answer it in less than 47 seconds.
yes.
Challenge
Which
accepted.
which the guy that currently holds it is Corey Dillinger from GTS Wrestling and has wrestled in the industry for a good bit. He
Okay.
used to be the general manager of GTS, used to also wrestle in GTS too. So,
All right. Well,
yeah.
I'll do my best. I'll try to beat that 47 seconds.
Okay. All right. You ready to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Favorite pre-show snack?
Obviously, it's going to be some kind of protein base, probably beef jerky, something along the lines. I usually have a protein shake with some type of like a protein bar, protein shake, beef jerky, something along those lines.
Pre-show jams. Your
Oh,
go-to
pre-show
song.
jams. It's got to be alternative rock or country rock. I listen to a lot of like Brantley Gilbert, but primarily on the way to shows, tend to listen to a lot of stuff like uh, like I listen to a little bit of everything, but primarily alternative rock. I love like Theory of a Dead Man, Shine Down, 3 Days Grace, Breaking Benjamin. I'm really big into Pop Evil right now.
Who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
Favorite wrestler growing up, hands down, had to be either Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton, or Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Favorite sports team?
Favorite sports team outside of wrestling is the Carolina Panthers.
Favorite color?
Blue and purple.
Favorite type of music, which you just
Yep.
answered.
Yep.
So that was 1 minute and 5 seconds. All right. What are the biggest challenges of being a professional wrestler outside of the ring?
Outside of the ring is the dedication. It's definitely the dedication because there's days that you wake up that you don't feel like doing it. There's days that you
Yeah.
wake up and you're hurting and you're tired and you're like, man, I got to go work my shoot job all day. And then it's like, I got to go work my shoot job all day and then I got to go to training after. I got to go work my shoot job all day and then I got to go to the gym after. And I feel like the dedication is definitely the hardest because there's days that it's really easy to say, whatever excuse you want to come up with to say, oh, I'm going home, I don't feel like it today, or oh, I'm going home and I'm going to bed, or oh, I'm going home because I got to catch up on this. But the dedication aspect is definitely the hardest. For me personally, I love the training aspect. Like, I don't mind going to training at all. I don't mind studying tape. I don't mind cutting the promos in the mirror. I don't mind none of that stuff. The only thing I truly don't like is going to the gym. And the only
Yeah.
reason I don't like going to the gym is because it's like, unless I go with like a friend of mine, then I feel like I'm not really pushing myself as hard. But when I'm there with my friend, it's like I feel like I'm getting to like have friend time and gym time. So then I always, me and him are very competitive. We're always trying to up each other's weight and stuff. So I always feel more productive when I go with a buddy. But that's really the only element for me is like I said, so the gym and dedication.
If you could wrestle any wrestler, any legendary wrestler from the past, who would you pick and why?
Okay, does it if it when you say from the past, does it have to be somebody from the past and they don't wrestle anymore? Or can it be somebody from the past that still wrestles?
Either one.
Okay, so any wrestler, um, if I had to pick, like the main one that comes to mind would probably be Chris Jericho, because like I told you earlier, I would really like to like watch wrestle him and learn from him, like how do you structure your matches, how do you put your, how do you change this and still make it work. That's something I would definitely want to do, especially considering that his gimmick is so like charisma based like mine. Like he was Y2J, he did the whole gimmick with that, and then he did the list, and he had all these different things, and every time he did something, it worked. So he would definitely be one of them. Obviously, we talked about AJ Styles. I'd like to wrestle AJ just kind of for the same reason, because he's very flashy. I want to see how he puts his matches together and makes his stuff make sense.
Yeah.
So definitely them two. That's the ones that stand out to me.
If you could attend a wrestling training session with any wrestler, who would you pick?
A training session with anybody, that one would probably go to. I'm leaning towards like a Shawn Michaels because he is. I feel like that he has so much from in the business, like knowledge wise, from
Yeah.
the older days to now, that he's still involved, and I feel like that he's watched the business change. So he knows what it took back then to get over, and he knows what it takes to get over now. And I feel like that if I was going to go to a training session with somebody, he would definitely be a top prospect that I would like to go to listen to, just because I want to hear him say, like, you know, this is kind of what I've seen wrestling do. I feel like this is the best route to go to be there. You know what I mean? So Shawn Michaels probably.
If you could have a wrestling legend as your mentor, who would you choose?
Wrestling legend as my mentor. I would say, That was rough. I feel like I'd probably have to lean towards The Rock. I feel like The Rock.
Yeah.
I feel like, but as a because I mean, obviously he's a legend, and the reason being is because he is The Rock. The best thing about The Rock is he's not just a superior athlete. He's not just a very good wrestler. He's also a phenomenal entertainer. So if I was going to have somebody that was going to be like my direct mentor to teach me how to do something, I would want it to be him specifically because he's going to show me how to do it as a wrestler, as an entertainer, and as an athlete. So he's
Yeah.
going to show me how to be safe with it in the ring to where I don't kill myself. He's also going to show me how to make it as flashy as possible so it gets over. And he's also going to show me, like, the fundamentals of it. Why does it make sense? So I feel like The Rock would probably be the best option in that category.
So on 2K, I run a universe called the Shockverse,
Okay.
and it's like your basic wrestling promotion. So we have a world, a tag, a mid card, or a cruiserweight title. Which one would you go for?
Um, Hands down, if it was me, I'm always going to push to go for the world. Um, I've held titles. I've held tag team titles, world titles, and mid card titles, but I always push for the world title specifically because I believe that I am that caliber guy. I feel like I am the main event. I feel like that I'm, the guy in the spotlight. So definitely, if I'm going to go for a title and I have an option to push for which one to go after, it's always going to be the main championship all day.
What advice would you give to an aspiring wrestler?
The best advice I can give to an aspiring wrestler would be success is built on failure. You're going to go through moments where you feel like that you're just the drizzling shits. You're going to feel like that you're not good. You're going to feel like that you're not worth it. You're going to feel like that none of this is going to pay off. And that's why I got to tell people, you got to realize that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This takes time, and it's going to, repetition and reps really go into play when you're trying to become a better wrestler. So if I had to give a piece of advice to somebody, it's going to be don't give up, keep pushing for your dreams to be what you want to be. And just remember that success is built on failure because you can't have success without failing to get there.
Yeah. What was it like working with a particular wrestler that you really clicked with in the ring?
There's always a moment when you wrestle that when you get in the ring with somebody, and sometimes it might be somebody that you know, and sometimes it might not be, but you always know when you get in the ring with somebody, when you get that first lockup in, and you start like wrestling around, you can feel like a natural chemistry that you just are playing off of each other. And usually, most of the time, if you have natural chemistry like that, that's organic, then you can work together really well as a tag team and you can work together really well as rivals because you know what it takes to make each other tick. So okay, well, if you're tagging, you got to have that chemistry to be like, well, I know what my partner's going to do.
Yeah.
Vice versa, if it's your rival, then you need to know, okay, well, I know that this is kind of his move set. I know this is what he does. And that natural chemistry will really coast you through. So when you ask like, what does it feel like? It's definitely a different feeling because you can tell as you wrestle and you get more matches in, the more matches you get, you can tell like, hey, this match doesn't feel like it's going well. And there's times that I'm wrong. I feel like the match is not going well, and then I go back and I watch the footage of it. And I'm like, oh wow, that was actually a really good match. But I'm also my world's worst critic, so like nobody's going to criticize me more than I do. Um, but like when you're in the ring with somebody that you just have that organic chemistry with, it takes the weight off of it, and you just know like that person for me. I ain't gonna say that person, but I'm gonna say one of those people for me is Chris Chaos. Like this Saturday, I'm wrestling at 71st High School in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it's going to be me versus Chris Chaos for the social media championship of Next Level Pro Wrestling. And I've wrestled Chris multiple times. Me and him have had like several matches, but every single time we get in the ring, we put on a different kind of match. Every time we get in the ring, we put on a different style of match. And every time, it's never failed. Every time we've got in the ring, whether it was a multi-man, a tag team, against each other, it's always been natural chemistry, easy to work with, fun to work, and it always leaves the crowd wanting more and leaves them wanting to see that next match. So that would definitely be the charisma factor. That's how that feeling is what, like, when you get in the ring with somebody like that.
Outside of the ring, what hobbies and what's hobbies bring you joy outside of the ring?
Um, a big thing for me is definitely like spending time with my friends. There's a lot of people that I share the ring with that I genuinely care about outside of wrestling that I love to see them in the ring, but I also love to see them outside of the ring and hang out and, just spend time together. So I do a lot of like friend gatherings, social gatherings, meeting up with my buddies, hanging out, talking, pitching ideas, just making jokes. Another big hobby that I have is I love to play video games. So like I'm not like overly crazy about it. Like I don't just dedicate a shit ton of time to it. But if I'm off of like, if I get off work and I've done my workout and I have like a couple hours to kill before I got to go do something else, then I'll turn on my game and like play some stuff, especially with my buddies because I have some friends that I wrestle with that they share the same games that I do. So it's like we get on there and play a lot. So that's the two main hobbies. Obviously, spending time with family is a big one. But I mean, I kind of label that under spending time with friends as well because I mean, I do consider a lot of my friends like family. So that would be my top two things outside of the ring that I do to like enjoy.
What is your favorite gear that you have ever had made?
My favorite gear is so the main set of gear that I wear it's very like sparkly. Like it's like black with like sparkles on it and it's got my custom logo on both legs. And the logo is in like a purplish blue reflective. So depending on how I move,
Yeah,
sometimes it looks blue, sometimes it looks purple. That's my favorite set of gear that I have made. But my second favorite gear, like the set of gear that I have, is Captain America themed. I took like the Winter Soldier themed gear where it was like Captain America's blue pants with like the black detail on it. And then I put a silver Captain America shield on both legs. And then on the shield, I put CJ Evans. So those are my two favorite sets that I have. Um, Definitely the sparkly one's my favorite when it comes to like my day to day like shows, but the Captain America is always good to break out in like if I'm at a Comic Con or something like that.
yeah. Um, where can you find you on social media?
Everybody can find me on social media at CJ Evans Pro. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. All of them are the same handle. It's at CJ Evans Pro. And, I'm primarily on Facebook and Instagram more, but those are all my social media platforms.
And then, guys, this is his Instagram, so you guys know what you guys are looking for on the show.
And
If
if
you
you
guys
go
want
to any, and if you go to like he's on my Instagram right there, you see there's a Linktree link. If you click that Linktree link, it'll take you to every one of my social medias. So I'm definitely not hard to find. All you got to do is look up the name and there I am.
well, thank you, CJ, for being on the podcast.
I really appreciate you having me. It was a good time, man. I definitely appreciate you reaching out and allowing me to come on your show. And I hope that, that this helps you grow and get some views. I also hope it helps get my name out a little bit and,
Yeah.
maybe brings in some more bookings later on. You know what I mean?
As it's getting streamed around. Which countries has it been in? The USA, Canada, the UK, and Italy.
Awesome. Well, CJ Evans does have his passport. So just in case anybody out there is watching that is a promoter and would like to bring the show out of the country, I do have my passport and I am willing to travel.
And then, guys, I am doing a giveaway at the end of the season. It will be on my profile towards the end of this. Well, it's going to be on the website once this episode's up and everything, where you can win 5 designs of a t-shirt out of 5 designs of a t-shirt. You get to pick the design, and it is also for wrestlers. They will have their own, so then it's not like I'm rigging it. Oh, this guy's been on the show, I got to get back.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I'm doing 2 different ones just so it's fair. But either way, you win same designs. Or if you guys see me at Wrestling Evolution shows or Bojack's new promotion, what's it called? The TBD Wrestling.
Those are both companies that I'm interested in working for as well. Wrestling Evolution's a big one I've been wanting to go out to check it out. And then I heard that Bojack had opened up his own company, so I'm definitely going to be reaching out to him to hopefully try to, debut in that sometime in 2025.
Yep. All right. See you guys next time on the episode where I'm interviewing what's his name? He was part of the Rumble. He's based on Elliot.
Oh, Goodwill?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay, Goodwill. He's a cool dude. You'll enjoy talking to him.
One thing I always remember is the guy with the fancy mustache from
Yes, sir. He is the working man's working man, and he's going to make it very clear when you talk to him.
All right. Hope to see you down the road at a show.
Absolutely, brother. I will definitely be seeing you. If you're at Firestar on Thursday, I'll see you then. If not, I'll definitely see you at some events in the future.
Yeah. All right.